Hi, Celebration Sisterhood at Midtown. So glad that you're here with us, kicking off the first week of our fall study on 1 Peter called Perseverance. This is how we overcome. This week's lesson is called Peter the Rock. And we talk about how we overcome through perseverance. You know, so many times when we look at people who have overcome incredible odds to do great things, we think there must have been just something different, something almost superhuman on the inside of them that made them able to overcome the odds they did to do what they did. I look at Helen Keller. I wrote about her in the first part of your workbook, and I talk about with all the odds against her, not only did she overcome and just function well, she actually became an unlikely change agent in her world. So many times I think we look at people like this and we think, well, what do they have that I don't have? And I want to tell you that what it really takes to be an overcomer a lot of times is just endurance. It's just sticking it out to the very end. And when the Apostle Peter wrote this book to the church, he was dealing with people who were facing so much persecution. He was dealing with people who had lost so much in standing up for their faith. And he was encouraging them to persevere in the face of great trials. The big message of this book is what to do when life is not fair. And we all know that life, many times, is not fair. But you have what it takes in you, through the power of the Holy Spirit, to persevere in the face of great trial. And this is how we overcome. Peter, we're going to talk about this a little bit today, but Peter was very qualified to talk about how perseverance helps us to overcome. And that's because he had to persevere and overcome so many things in his life. There's something about persevering through trials that gives us authority to speak to other people when they're going through trials. And I just want you to know that no matter what you're walking through today, whether your challenges seem big to you, whether they're just little annoyances that seem small, God is with you, and he is concerned about every detail that concerns you. And know this, that just like Peter, when you walk through your trials, when you persevere and you overcome, your story, like Peter's story, is going to bring comfort and encouragement to someone else. I'm going to turn it over to your location host today, and I trust you're going to be blessed by today's message.
So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Liz Hineman, and I'm the Sisterhood Coordinator here on staff. And I just want to welcome everyone. If you would, join me in welcoming all those who are watching via video. We're so glad that you're tuning in and joining us. So glad to have you wherever you might be watching, and so glad for all of you who are here. I'm so excited to kick off week 1 of Perseverance. This is how we overcome. And I just want to start by thanking Pastor Carrie for this opportunity and pressure of starting off the very first week. But no, thank you for the opportunity. It's such an honor, and I don't ever, especially kicking off this series, I don't take this lightly. And I really can truly say that I am the woman that I am because of Pastor Carrie, because of you, and just your development and what you've spoken to my life, and just everything that you have pushed me into. And so I do appreciate it. And I really, really just honor you and value you as the mother of this house and just who you are. So thank you, Pastor Carrie. She really is amazing. So as I mentioned, I'm the Sisterhood Coordinator here on staff, so I get to work with Pastor Carrie. I get to work at Celebration Church, which is the best church in the entire universe. I'm a little biased, but I'm allowed to be. So I'm also, for those of you who don't know, I'm engaged to be married. And his name is Will, but I affectionately call him God's Will. God's will for me, not for you. So just to clarify, I actually got my wedding dress this past weekend, so I'm really excited about that. And some people might look at my life and say, okay, you're on staff, you work at Celebration Church, you get to work with Pastor Carrie, you're engaged to the most handsome man on the universe, and you're planning this wedding, all this stuff, if I had all that, I'd be so happy. If I had all that, I'd feel so fulfilled. There'd be nothing that I'd want for, if I had all that. And I think we can do that a lot of times. We can look at other people's lives and say, well, if I had that, then. Well, if I had this, then I would feel fulfilled. But to be really honest and transparent with you, I get sad, like really sad, like to the point where I'm like, how can I get happy again? At times. I get overwhelmed where I feel like I have no idea how I can do everything that I'm supposed to do. I get lonely, where I just feel alone. It does not matter what you have in life. There are still, each and every person has their struggle. Each and every person has things that they have to walk through. You may not even see it from the outside. From the outside, you might be a really strong person, and you might have everything looking like it's totally together on the outside. But on the inside, there are times when you feel really hurt. Or there are times when you feel like you just don't know how you can do everything that's on your plate. And I think every single one of us goes through that. And I want to say that if you're in here and you feel sad, you feel alone, you feel overwhelmed, or you have felt that way, you're not alone. And you're in the right place. This is where you need to be. And I want to encourage you, stay for the table time. If you're watching on video, watch with some other people, gather afterwards, have some discussion around this. You know, this is where relationships are formed. Sisterhood is way more than just a message from the pulpit. It is about relationships and community and being around each other. We need each other because we all, and you know, I love what Pastor Stovall always says. You either just came out of a trial, you're about to go in a trial, or you're in one right now. And so if you're not in one and you didn't just come out of one, look out. You're about to go in one. So there's always one right around the corner, but don't wait for the trial to try to build relationships. Now is the time to cultivate relationships. You know, I think the people who end up feeling the most alone when they're going through someone or going through something are the people who they didn't build relationships when times were good. They were just, oh, everything's good. I don't have to worry about it. Just going on with life. And then all of a sudden, boom. And then you're like, who can I turn to? Who can I call? Where can I go for help? Because you didn't build those relationships. So I just want to encourage you. Sisterhood is meant to be a sisterhood. That's the name of it. We're sisters in this together. We want to encourage each other, lift each other up, push each other forward. You know, just like I was talking about Pastor Carrie doing with me, that's the same thing we want to do with each other. Speak life into one another, you know, serve to develop one another and build each other up to everything that God has for us. And so in this series, we're going to be talking about persevering through those difficult times and through seasons in our life that maybe take a little longer than we want them to. How many of you know God's timing is a little bit different than ours? I'm sure we've all learned that lesson at one point or another. And so God's timing is different. And you know, one story that I'll share with you, and I've probably shared it with some of you before, is just when I first graduated from college, I worked at the Art Institutes, which is it's a college, and I would go around to high schools, do presentations, and I loved it, but about 6 months in, I knew I was called to be in full-time ministry. Like, I just knew. I was like, there's not a doubt in my mind. I know God's calling me to full-time ministry, and so 6 months in, I'm like, okay, so what's next, God? You know, like, okay, well, what do you have for me? What's next? And, you know, I'm pretty naturally a positive person, so I always just expect things are going to go my way and just things are going to happen, and I just know that God's going to bless me. I just have that faith and believe. So, you know, 6 months in, I knew that wasn't what God had for me, and so already I'm very expectant, very hopeful, and literally it was 1 year went by, nothing. 2 years went by, nothing. And then I'm like looking and I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's not ministry next. Maybe it's supposed to be, you know, something else first, like maybe teaching. You know, I love teaching. So maybe I'm supposed to be a teacher for a little while and then go into ministry. So I like applied to be a teacher and I got a call back and they offered me a job like that, like right away. And I just did not have peace about it. Like I was like, no, this isn't what God has for me. And so I declined it. I said, no, I have to decline it. And so kept praying, and it was during January. It was the 21 days of prayer and fasting. And I remember I was at a school in Georgia, and I was sitting outside in my car on a break, and I was just praying, and I'm like, God, what do you want me to do? And I'm like, what do you have for me? Like, you know, what do you want me to do? And I just felt like he said, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I want to work at the church. And I felt like he said, okay, then apply. And I was like, okay, you're making this sound really easy. I'm like, it's been 2 years. I don't know if you know this, but it's been a long time, and you're making this sound really simple. And so I called up the church, and I'm like, I'm sure you get this call all the time, but, you know, I'm really interested in being on staff, and if anything ever comes open, you know, I'd really be interested. And, you know, the woman I was talking to was like, oh, my goodness, you're such a high-level volunteer. We'd love to have you on staff. You know, so encouraging, and she's like, turn in your resume. We don't have anything right now, but there's always things coming up, and, you know, positions opening up. So I was like, yes, awesome, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. And so turn in my resume, so excited, so hopeful, so expectant, and then I heard nothing. It's like 1 month later, nothing. 2 months later, nothing. 3 months later, I'm like, okay, God, should I send an email? Just let them know I'm still here. Like, have they forgotten about me? Do they know I still exist? I'm still coming to church here. still wanting to get on staff. And I just felt like, no, just wait. Another month later, it was like, I think it was May. It was April or May. I got a call back and they said, come in for an interview. So I was like, okay, come in for an interview. So I came in, interviewed, and then got a call back a month later in June. You didn't get the job. So like all this like expectation, hope, keeps getting built up, keep getting my hopes up, keep putting my faith in God, and then let down. And of course with that, it's like, okay, like, am I just not good enough? Like, what don't they see in me? Like, do I not have what it takes? Am I not, like, did I hear God? Did I miss God? Is this really where he was leading me? Is this really what he was telling me to do? And more questions and more just like, okay, what's going on here? And so, after like kind of pondering on it and praying about it, I just felt like, you know what? Maybe I'm just supposed to put everything I have into the job where I am right now and just put everything in and just serve wholeheartedly, which is probably what God wanted all along, is for me to put everything into where I was. I think so often we're so expectant about the next season that we forget God actually has us where we are for a reason. He actually has you right where you are for a purpose. And so I really put everything into where I was and, just got super involved, and I was able to share my testimony with people and talk about the missions trip I had been on to Africa and, really able to talk to people. And then it was 2 months after that, so the end of August, I got a call, and they offered me to be Pastor Carey's assistant, which was the job that God had for me all along. And that was the position that he knew was for me. But if I would have taken the teacher's position, or if I would have given up and said, you know what, forget about this, or gone some other way, or just, sometimes the easy thing is literally just to go under the covers and pull them over your head and just cry. Sometimes the easy thing is just to like curl up in a ball and take a nap. And if I would have done that, I would have missed what God had for me. And God has a purpose and a plan for each and every one of you in this room. And you're not here by accident. You're not here, you're here on purpose. God has a message for you. If you're watching on video, God has a purpose for you. God has a message for you. And he wants to speak something to your heart through this message. There are things that we have to overcome in our lives. There are things that we have to persevere through. And